Thank you. And I will be speaking about how to spend that money that we just talked about. And as a member of the host university, I'm really happy to be part of this launch event. And in line with the theme of this panel, continuous auditing for effective use of public resources, I want to focus more on a practical application, a local implementation example in Turkiye, the Turkiye's new public sector austerity measures, or the state savings and efficiency plan, as I like to call it. And of course, I will be leveraging on the global growth and inflationary trends, role of public sector, their efficiency, all that perspective that was laid out by Professor Lourens and the other colleagues. Well, first we need to make sure one thing at this point. Although we sometimes hear a lot of criticism about these Turkish austerity measures, given the size of public government resources in question here, even this type of incremental, small but continuous improvements, they are also huge innovations for the sizes of governments and their expenditures. And in particular, I will be talking about how to potentially achieve a rather continuous public resource efficiency within the scope of these recent Turkish austerity measures that we are talking about. And I'll be, if we have enough time, talking about the expenditure side, the income inflow side, the steering mechanisms, and the innovations in those aspects. And the new tax schemes that are talked about nowadays, how the government is planning to increase income and dealing with the informal economy, again, part of the popular discussion nowadays. Just to make sure one critical point here, these recent measures, they should rather, I would say, be read as austerity and efficiency, as well as transparency, accountability, sustainability in public sector aspects that we know. And considering the launch event of this CAPIA project, which, as I understand, CAPIA Project, okay. It's my understanding is that it introduces a risk-based, sustainable, and AI-based audit approach for efficient resource utilization alongside the new developments in public sector. And I would say it seems like it could provide a good theoretical base for this practical Turkish experience. So about the Turkish austerity measures, the state saving and efficiency package that is ongoing right now, it is initially a three-year plan, a three-year austerity plan that the government is planning to, first of all, to deal with the relatively high inflation in Turkey, about 75% nowadays, and increase efficiency of public sector expenditures, efficiency of its resources. And it's planning to cut a wide range of public spendings, actually, and maybe not increase the minimum wage that is also being discussed nowadays. And certain public expenditures, they will be completely frozen. The recruitment for civil service, public services, they will also be limited. And in addition to the inflation, current account deficit, and earthquake finances, the government is planning to reduce public spending and increase fiscal tightening, which is pretty much needed in addition to the past 1 year's monetary tightening. And it's trying to direct investment towards more productive areas, trying to strengthen its disinflation program to achieve price stability, which is very much needed nowadays in Turkey. And the state saving and efficiency package that we're talking about nowadays, it will be implemented partly by some circular ladders that we call genelgeler in Turkiye, and some of these public spending cuts, they may require some legislative changes, which probably will be submitted to the parliament before the summer break. The government basically is, in addition to reducing the government spending and boosting efficiency, is trying to prioritize essential investment projects, more efficient, more productive projects. And of course, there are some sectors that are exempt from these cuts, from these decreases: the health, security, defense sectors, and also the earthquake-related expenditures, digitalization, green transformation, agricultural exceptions. So the government is planning to keep focusing on the earthquake zones, green and digital transformation and related projects, and other railway and port projects related to or near to the industrial zones. And that type of exemptions, they are a reality. But apart from that, they're planning to direct investments toward more effective, productive areas, trying to accelerate the structural reforms and improving public finances. And part of it, of course, is digitalization, the AI-based, blockchain-based improvements that I'll talk about soon. So these...
I would like to ask another question to our masters here.
Measures or in the legislation?
They are proposed, yeah. Part of them they are implemented. Part of them they will need some legislative changes. But
perhaps the regulations are still being developed for them to adapt.
To in line with and be on time and give reasonable assurance, and
I see. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
just preparing.
Get them up to speed.
Yeah. Any?
okay, so
Thank you.
yeah,
I
thank you.
This is one of them, right? I mean, through this venue.
Yes, to create awareness, and if needed, we are ready to collaborate. Thank you.
Talk about the pros and cons. Anything missing about that, of course. So it seems like the package, this plan, it's primarily focusing on or trying to cut spendings related to transportation, building and construction, public employment, new recruitments especially, temporary overseas assignment costs, and energy and waste management is talked about a lot, as well as the communication expenses. And as we see here, here we have a summary projected cuts. For example, in representation and promotion expenditures, Turkish government is planning to have a 25% cut, and in investment spending, another 15% cut, and in about 10% cut in relatively bigger purchases of goods and services in public sector. But we'll see, of course, how things will work out looking forward. And just to make sure, the government is also not sure about the exact amount, but by the summer, they are also expecting to have some figures about that. But these figures, they may not be that huge, but it surely is a good start, a good kickoff. These austerity measures, this practical implication of hopefully your project, it is actually part of a decades-long austerity measures in Turkey. And for these year's austerity measures, the government is planning to have 100 to 150 billion Turkish lira saving, which is about 3 to 5%, 3 to 5 billion US dollar, I'm sorry. So this is basically their plan. But we talked about the long history, decades-long history, and we should also be sure about how it differs from the earlier examples. Of course, a few differences that we could talk about that are also widely discussed in media. Their implementation and monitoring of these austerity measures. They will basically be controlled and monitored by Ministry of Treasury and Finance, and also the Strategies and Budget Presidency of Turkiye. But in addition to that, these measures, they will also be enforced this time, and they will also bring forward some penalties and even fine mechanisms this time, and hopefully they will work out. This is basically these differences or these implementation monitoring aspects. This is probably where digitalization and AI, blockchain, and the continuity aspects, they will step in. And I'll try to talk about that in a few minutes again. And the critical things about these measures, this fiscal aspect of this saving package, a few aspects of that I should mention. First of these critical issues to contemplate for the Turkish case is the high inflation. Turkey is dealing with a relatively high inflation, about 75% nowadays. But that's not the only issue. We have a 5 to 6% budget deficit. And that is indeed a problem, because if you don't bring down that high budget deficit, that relates to relatively higher borrowing and then higher interest payments, and the cost will be much higher, which is another issue the developing economies are dealing with nowadays. And you need to increase the macro saving as well, which is another issue in Turkey and related to the relatively high current account deficit. The saving rate in Turkey, the aggregate saving rate is about 30%, not very, very bad, but the household saving rate is about 10%, and it's much lower than its European counterparts, which usually starts from 12%, and we need to raise it a little bit to at least 12, and in the medium term to 20% maybe. So there is still a lot to do in that sense, and also the huge earthquake reconstruction costs, which officially are estimated to be about 104 billion US dollar, and Turkey needs to work on that a lot. So for that also we need this type of austerity measures. It's another critical issue to contemplate looking forward. But of course, this type of measures, the austerity measures, this type of saving packages, they get a lot of criticism as well. But the critical question is whether these measures are just some symbolic measures, whether they are just some goodwill gestures, or are they really some credible, down-to-earth, serious, coherent measures package that we should really pay attention to. And I would like to believe in the second option. And but of course, they should also be part of a series of major public spending cuts, austerity measures. They should be part of an extensive saving plan, and they should continue, is what I mean, looking forward, not just for a few years. And this type of limited budget oversights, and we talked about the monitoring mechanism that will play in at this time, they have actually been long an issue. They have been debated a lot in the past. And that's why we have the criticism now about this package as well. And some further issues to underline. The sufficiency of these measures, whether they will be sufficient. Well, that's a good criticism, actually. But the exact figures, they will be clear in the next few months, at least. And we're still not sure about the macro and quantitative impacts of these measures, especially over the labor market and the real sector, real economic impacts. They have to be evaluated, analyzed more clearly. And the economic contraction, potential economic contraction, and new challenge, they may also arise. We have to be careful. And probably one of the good criticism is that the burden of this type of measures, austerity measures, they should not be just shared by the poor and the fixed income individuals, and should be equally distributed between all the shareholders. Of course, the challenges that the governments in Turkey has faced in implementation in the past, that's another critical issue to bear in mind. But after talking about all those aspects, I would say the primary innovation or the value added here of these new measures, on the other hand, is the digitalization and AI that is incorporated into this process. Probably the most critical value added in this current measures, austerity measures, it is the digitalization aspects that are talked about, the innovation, the data-driven approach to increasing efficiency, productivity, the increasing efficiency of this austerity overall, and the digitalization, digital instruments that will be used in this process and use of the AI and other new technologies, it actually also seems to be necessary, particularly in a continuous auditing side, if we're talking about a continuous process of austerity looking forward, not just for a few years. And in the oversight, regulation, and coordination, I will say implementation and monitoring of these measures and the new penalties and the fine mechanism in cases of violation, for example, they will be very, very critical. But also the sustainable data governance and the blockchain-based new technologies, they could bring down the costs and increase efficiency. And we need to pay more attention to use of AI in austerity, and actually Turkish government is also working on a program that I will show in the next slide. And we need to pay more attention on effective use of AI in both the austerity measures in general and also the accounting aspect of that. They will be very critical. The oversight and monitoring of the public sector payments, that expenditures, effective use of AI will be very, very important. And Turkish government, it is actually working on an AI-supported accounting and advanced analytical project. This is mainly for a better monitoring, warning, and transparency, accountability, and also the sustainability in the public sector in the medium to long run. And the AI-based approach that the Turkish government is working on is called AI-supported accounting and analytics project. And this is basically an AI-driven system to monitor the spendings, to improve public budget efficiency, fiscal efficiency, with an AI-enabled accounting. Overall, looking at this practical implication of the theoretical setup the CAPIA project has been working on, it seems like the Turkish case, it is actually, despite all the criticism, it is considering the size of all the public expenditures that we're talking about, it is a small, incremental, but if continues, it could be a very innovative and much needed process, I would say. And that was the whole story of this presentation.